breaking up with someone you're close to, someone that's been in your life for a long time, it's kind of like dying. And that's why it hurts so bad. That's why. All the other reasons, all the underlying reasons that you may think about or talk about or read about or listen to, watch videos about, they're all underlying. They're all periphery to the core point. If it hurts, deeply, if it hurts badly, it's because a part of you doesn't want to die. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, somebody who's a meditator, somebody who's deeply into meditating and is a pro at it, although that's the most ridiculous thing to say somebody could be a pro at meditating. But if you're good at it, and if you understand the nature of reality and the non-dual nature of existence, and you understand the warrior path, you're gonna understand this. This is a basic thing. It's just not too complicated, even though it seems complicated, right? And for a lot of people, it does seem complicated. So I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about the seeming complexity of a breakup and the seeming complexity of heartbreak, of loss, of any of that stuff. Now, again, we're only talking about the subset of things, of events where you're breaking up with somebody, where they're still around, but they're leaving you. And most of the time, it's them not wanting to be with you, but you still wanting to be with them. The other way around just doesn't hurt that much, it seems. The reason it seems complex, and the reason it seems so profound in a sense, so profound. It's seemingly so profound. It's so it seems so deep. It seems so interesting in a way, right? Like this complex thing that you're enmeshed and wrapped in, only you and no one else. But in reality, you're feeling the most common and ordinary things, the most common and ordinary ones. The only problem is that this set of common and ordinary things, this one that you're feeling in particular, it's the kind of common and ordinary stuff that makes you feel like shit. It's that variety. Common and ordinary stuff, but of the shitty feeling, nasty feeling variety. That's all it is. Just because you feel like shit doesn't mean there's anything more to it. Doesn't mean that at all. And again, I want to talk about the reasons why it seems complex and the reason why it's simple. Actually, that's what I really want to talk about, not the reasons it seems complex. I want to talk about the reasons why it's simple. The reasons why it seems complex are a little more complicated, and I may not know the exact reasons that it seems complex and that we're so enamored by these types of feelings. These reasons could be evolutionary, could be based in modern approaches to living, modern stories, or the recently received romantic philosophy and approach to life over the last few hundred years, an approach that still is very much in existence today and influences people today. Although with these last three generations, starting with Gen X, then Gen Y, and then Gen Z, it's my personal opinion that romantic notion is going away, and some of the old inherited notions of the last few centuries, like the preeminency of the human spirit, of the human in himself or herself, that the human is the end in and of itself, in and of himself or herself, and that there's nothing else beyond that. That's new, and we're kind of moving away from that, with more of a focus on AI, more of a focus on processes, but at the same time, more of a focus on outcomes and less of a focus on outcomes. So in some things we're focused on outcomes more, and in some things we're focused on outcomes less. So that's kind of going away. Maybe our grandkids will be far less romantic than we are. Maybe. Romantic in the broad, true sense of the word. But we still are pretty romantic people, and we still have these kinds of thoughts in our heads, the thoughts, that we read about when we read books, when we were kids. The thoughts that are portrayed in movies over the last maybe 3 to 8 decades. All the movies that existed, very heavily influenced by the romantic inherited ideas over the last few centuries. If you bucket all the movies in Western civilization, they're pretty much all in that bucket. Some are not, but we're very, out of all the ways a person's mind can think, out of all the ways, we're right here. We're in a pretty narrow band in terms of what we're thinking about. And so that could be the reason, but there could be other reasons, and I'm not sure why. I don't care. I'm not going to speculate on the reasons. Although somebody might be interested in that, and I may be interested in hearing it, but I personally don't think I'm going to be able to figure out the reasons why. But I have figured out that it's not that big of a fucking deal. That's just not that complex, and that there's nothing deep in any of this. Where the person that just broke up, he thinks he's the deepest, most intense person in the world. The depths of his or her emotions, the ocean of emotions that resides in this person who just broke up with somebody. Wow, that's unrivaled anywhere in the world. That's what they think. They think that they're just such an ocean of emotion, and feeling, and sensitivity, and depth, and meaning, and capacity. But in reality, they're just like me. They're shallow as fuck. They're just like you. You're shallow as fuck. We're all incredibly shallow because all of us, all the time, have always only ever experienced and will only ever experience the present moment. Just what we're feeling now. And nothing more, nothing else. Nothing else exists. The past does not exist, and neither does the future. You only have your present moment. So whether society calls you shallow or deep, whether you think you're shallow or deep, all that doesn't matter. We're all shallow as fuck because we're all sitting here and just observing this beautiful, sometimes scary, sometimes beautiful, wild movie. And that's it. There's nothing else. There's not a place to sit outside of this. And there's not even a millimeter, not even a micrometer or a nanometer of depth beyond just whatever appears. And yet at the same time, nothing more is needed. Because that thing that appears, this thing that we see every moment, every day, it's beautiful and meaningful all on its own. And nothing more is needed. And there's a paradox there, right? But why is it simple? Why is it simple? It's simple because when you break up with somebody, the monkey is ending a core process that it used to do. It was an important process if it was an important and serious relationship. And this process is both physical, right? Physical, where the monkey actually does things in the world, and mental. So you start having these mental processes. And the mental ones are more important. So, say you have a person who breaks up with their significant other after maybe a 5-year relationship, right? They've moved in together. They're not married yet, but they've moved in together. They loved each other. They're obviously sexually intimate with each other. In modern society, that comes very quickly with people. Sexual intimacy it's no longer regarded as something that it's no longer regarded as the jewel that it used to be. It's now been cheapened, where people don't really respect or value the old ways of thinking anymore about sex and sexual intimacy. And so you're quickly jumping into a sexual relationship, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the 5-year couple. But with that 5-year couple, we know they're having sex. We know they had sex. Maybe in the beginning they had a ton of it, maybe over time less of it, but we know they're having a lot of sex, or they had it. And so this person, whoever's in it, whether it's a man or a woman, they're intimately connected with their partner. So even if it's a guy, I would say that's the case. If it's a girl, I would say that's the case as well. Both for men and women, anecdotally, it seems like when you have sex with people, there is a connection that's formed. With women, it's a little different, and than it is with men. There are differences, and you can commonly see people say anecdotal, ridiculous things like, "Oh, men just care about sex," and that there's no emotion involved. That's true to only a certain extent. Women probably are more emotional, but when sex is taken away after a breakup, usually men are going to hurt more. Men are going to hurt quite a bit more from that, and women are going to hurt far less. And there's a couple of reasons for that. If a woman was broken up with by the man, and she's reasonably decent looking, she's going to be able to go have sex pretty easily, right? And so a core thing for women is not going to be the sex part. That's not what she's going to be sad about. Where that comes from, again, I don't know. And these are interesting questions. Now, I've read quite a bit about a lot of topics, and one of them is male and female sexuality. And there's a lot of opinions on it. And I'm honestly skeptical because anytime, and this is a core theme that I'm going to return to, a very important theme, anytime you presume to have knowledge about something in a grand and broad sense, like saying, oh, this is why humans are like this about sex, that is not based on experimentation, not based on a very concrete, narrow set of experiments as we kind of define science now over the last 4 or 5 centuries. So science allows you to make really cool statements like, we did this experiment, this is what happens when you take this drug. But you can't really do that experiment in the same way we can't, as we're human beings now with our technology. We can't do the same experiment with sexuality. So understanding why something happened is a wildly complex thing. It's very difficult to do. And so we should really be careful about talking about the whys of things. Really be careful. I think that's a really big value add. If we can all back off a little bit and really take it easy on talking about the whys. We all talk about the whys way too much, even though we don't know why things happen. And we should just focus more on paying real attention and stop thinking about the whys, stop being lost in your thoughts, and instead focus on what is. Observe, document what is. Start there. That'll be a far more solid foundation for everything in the world. Everyone, whether you're just a random guy trying to make your way up in the world, or whether you're a huge leader and you're leading just tons of things, leading tons of people, tons of capital, tons of money, and you're deciding how to deploy that, regardless, whether you're the lowest or the highest, take it easy on the why. That's always going to be a value add because we just rarely know. We rarely know the whys. Okay, now back from that tangent. So for women, sex is going to be easier to come by in today's world, right? In all worlds, but in the past there was an additional layer of stigma that was attached psychologically to most women, where they would the idea of just going out and sleeping with a random guy would be so contrary, so anathema to who they are, or who they think they are, really, but that they wouldn't do it. But today there's no boundaries like that, and you could easily go do it. And in most, not in most circles, in a significant portion of circles, they're not going to be judged negatively for that, so they're able to do it. And so all I'm saying here is that women easily can go and fill that portion. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for them to dwell on the sexual part. It just wouldn't. And if we're going to jump to the whys, if you're going to ask about the whys, one reason that people have put forward is that evolutionarily it makes sense for women to be that way, because they're the ones that are gonna hold a baby for 9 months, and so they're gonna be more selective, and over time that has given women the power to choose sexual mates. So in animals, sometimes women, sometimes men choose the sexual mates. A lot of random crazy shit happens in the animal world. Humans, compared to some of the wild fucking crazy sexual shit that happens in the animal world, like mating, in terms of mating strategies, and even time frames, human women are able to have sex and bear children all the time. But for many animals, women are not able to have sex during certain periods, and there's only certain periods in which they are what is called in heat, and then they're able to have sex. Then they want to have sex, and then that's when they're gonna be able to have kids. So that's not even something we even understand about with humans, but it's part of us anyways, because we're evolved from ancient ancient organisms that also evolved into these in heat type animals that are capable of being in heat. So we all share this, even though it doesn't really manifest in us. But again, it seems that women have more sexual power immediately. Where if a man just like you can use it as like an indicator, like a metric. Like if you're gonna say let's put metrics to it to see if you're right or wrong. Look, here's a metric: time to sex. So if a man wants to have sex right now, how long will it take him to get sex, and what kind of things will he have to do? If a woman wants sex right now, how long will it take her to have sex, and what kind of things would she have to do? That's one way. That's one metric. Another way to think about it is if both of them acted the same. So say a woman broke up in one city and just another random guy broke up in another city, right? And we're watching them on two screens. This guy does whatever he's going to do to have sex immediately. That same night he's having sex with somebody because he's so distraught over his girlfriend. He thinks going to have sex with another girl is going to make him feel better. And the woman does the exact same thing. Most people, most normal, rational people, are not gonna. They may judge the guy, but they're not gonna judge him too hard. But they're gonna judge the woman. The reason that judgment comes is because it's so easy for her to have sex. If it wasn't, that judgment wouldn't be there. It's not that there's a conservative or religious aspect to it. There's a something else. I don't know the right words for it, but there's something else. When something is so easy to come by, it's different when you do it than when something is not as easy to come by. It's a little different. So hard to explain. Definitely don't know why. So some people are talking about evolutionary reasons. Other people are talking about sociological reasons. So it's not going to be the sex for women. It's going to be other things that are hurting a woman. Other deep things that can be hurting a woman. And I'm not a woman. Who am I to speak for women? But it's going to be similar stuff that are going to affect men, except you just take out the sex piece. Now, for men, I think this is true, and I think some people will disagree with it. What I'm going to be saying here may a lot of people don't want to hear this kind of stuff because whenever you feel these kinds of intense emotions, you elevate them too much. You put them on a pedestal. You don't see the emotions for what they really are. And so when I undermine them and dismiss them deeply, unequivocally dismiss them and undermine them, cut them off right on their legs, it's not pleasant, right? You don't want to be told that this thing you're feeling deeply emotional about is ridiculous, but it is. So for men, most of it is driven by sex, especially for men who are, who are not getting a lot of sex and who are not either capable of getting a lot of it or who are capable but don't think they're capable of doing it. So sex is important for men. And if a man is in a relationship where whether or not they're having a lot of sex at the time, whether or not you're having a lot of sex, even if your sexual thing is in a lull, even if it's a negative state, there's a certain comfort that comes with knowing that you have a partner to have sex with. There's a certain richness that adds to your life. And many men throughout history have never experienced that. Many animals have never experienced that. So humans created a weird and wild and crazy system where all the men pair off with all the women. And it deeply, deeply benefits men. So the patriarchal system has created a society that just unbelievably sexually benefits men. But except for the last few decades, but even the last few decades, I would say, is just purely benefiting men. And I sometimes hear people say this: They say that the idea of pairing off, where you have one man, one woman, that benefits women somehow, which it couldn't be farther from the truth. That's the most stupid, ridiculous thing to say. Pairing off man to man deeply has benefited males, human males. Look at how other species live. Most males have never fucked in their entire lives. Not in their entire lives. Not a single time. They are born virgins and they die virgins. And only one or two or three strong, tough alpha males gets to fuck all the ladies in the tribe. And those are the people whose kids are brought up by the entire tribe. And that is how humans lived in the ancient past. Probably as well. Probably. Again, we don't know anything for certain, but scholars seem to, modern scholars seem to say that's the case. Humans probably did the same thing. So if you go back 50,000 years ago, you go to a tribe, you see 150 people. Most of the men there are not having sex. Most of the women will have had sex sometime. Pretty much all the women. All the normal women are going to have had sex, and only a few of the males are going to have had sex. If those males were transported today, and they would be identical to me and you, they would be identical human beings, humans. Where if you took them as a baby, put them in an American family, they would be Americans. You take that person, you show them today's world, and they think you're in some blissful state where no matter what kind of luck you have, what kind of draw the dice you have, draw the dice, toss the dice, whatever you get, whether you're an alpha male or a fucking beta male, regardless, you still get to have a partner, and you still get to fuck every night if you want to. That's pretty good. That sounds like it's something for men. Okay? And men, the first thing they are upset about is the loss of this sexual, what's the right word? Not freedom. The loss of the ability to just have sex at any time. It's nice having somebody that you know, not necessarily whether you want to or not, but that a subconscious part of your brain, not something that you're observing, but a deeper part of your brain that is not, you're not communicating with it. You can't communicate with it. The only way you can communicate with it is when things break through that dark cloud and enter your actual consciousness. When that happens, you observe that, oh shit, I feel like shit. I feel miserable. I need to get this partner back. And then you start all these stories, all this depression, all this anxiety, all this emotion, and seeming love and affection for this person starts bubbling up. And you're fooled very effectively, and maybe correctly. Per evolutionary standards, you're fooled. No one's telling you about sex or anything like that. You're just thinking, okay, I need to get this partner back because you lost an important piece of something that's important, something that's core, right? Something core. You lost that sexual aspect, and you want it back. And so that's half of it. But all of these things, whether it's this story you tell yourself about, and the story is subconscious, this story you tell yourself about having a sexual partner, or if you're a woman, whatever you tell yourself, or all the other things men can tell themselves. I kind of went on a tangent here. I'm going to try to bring it back. All these stories you could tell yourself, they're all stories that you've built up and replayed over your head, in your head, over and over again. And so these neural pathways are very well formed, like a skier going the entire season going down the same path. By the end of the season, the ski path is going to be snow everywhere and just a really well cut path through where he slid through all season long, all winter long. And so in the same way in your brain, you have these extremely well traveled paths that represent effectively who you are, not really who you are, but the story of who you are. This egoic thing that we're trying to destroy, this egoic thing that we're trying to kill, this egoic thing that warriors throughout history, when they wrote about it, whether they're warriors in Europe, whether they're warriors in the Americas or in Asia, all of them, all of them touched on it. Maybe some more explicitly than others, but all of them touched on the idea of death and ego death. and how ego death, dying like that, you're killing your ego, is very similar to dying for real. Very similar, far closer than you think. And then when your partner's lost, it's kind of like dying. Because who are you if you're not with that person? Who the fuck are you? You've built your life around this person, 5 years with this person. Everything you have in your mind, everything is built on a foundation that's really using the relationship as concrete. You've built your life around this relationship. You built who you are, who you perceive you are around this relationship. That's so fucking important. That's why you're miserable. That's why.